Charizard is the most popular Pokemon of them all! Nah, that's not true. It's actually the... I'll save it for later on in the video. Here are 50 facts on the Kanto Starters. Early art from the Pokemon series shows the player character from the Red and Green games alongside the 3 starters and Pikachu, where Bulbasaur once had gray eyes and a snout. The Charmander family has undergone many aesthetic changes. Early artwork shows Charmander with a more aggressive look, fuller blue eyes, and spikes. Charizard had a tougher jaw and a single horn like Charmeleon, rather than 2 horns. Initially, Charizard's wings were light green, with it now being darker, sometimes even mistaken for blue wings, and its Gen 2 shiny sprite was purple with green wings. Later, the shiny purple sprite changed into its now infamous black and red sprite. Squirtle, Wartortle, Blastoise all keep having the color their sprites changed. Squirtle has gone through a few different color changes throughout the years. Wartortle's colors seem to be different after every generation, and Blastoise also experiences color changes, though less drastically. Ivysaur is the only second stage grass and poison type Pokemon to not evolve by an evolutionary stone, the others being Gloom, Weepinbell, and Roselia. In Generation 9, for whatever reason, Charmeleon is unable to learn Fire Spin, while both Charizard and Charmander can. Wartortle's tail is inspired by the Japanese Minogami legend, where a turtle grows a seaweed tail, symbolizing longevity. The Pokédex also notes Wartortle's tail as a symbol of longevity. With it being supposed seaweed, it makes you wonder how soft Wartortle's tail might be. It's got potential to be a great pillow. Venusaur is Ken Sugimori's least favorite Pokemon due to its complex design, making it difficult to draw. It may not seem too complex now with over 1,000 Pokemon, but among the first generation Pokemon, Venusaur's design is one of the most intricate. Charizard has appeared in every Super Smash Bros. Iteration with 3 different roles. Initially in the original Melee, it was a non-playable Pokemon summon. In Brawl, it became a playable character with Squirtle and Ivysaur. In Smash 4, it was a standalone character, and in Ultimate, it returned under the Pokemon Trainer's command. It's the only Pokemon to transition from a Pokeball summon to a playable character. Early artwork of a battle between Blastoise, originally named Carabaijo, and Staryu shows many differences in Blastoise's design. Blastoise was rounder, had different arms and legs, a head resembling Wartortle's with large front teeth, larger eyes, Wartortle-like ears, and lacked its signature water cannons. I'm gonna nickname my next Blastoise Carabaijo for sure. Most fans of the original Pokemon anime will recall Mewtwo and Mew to be the first Pokemon that appeared in the opening of the show, and therefore the first Pokemon to appear in the anime. But the original Japanese airing and theme of the show actually had the scene with Charizard, Blastoise, and Venusaur to be the first Pokemon to appear in that order, meaning that the fully evolved Kanto Starters were the first Pokemon to appear in the anime. In the English translation of the Pokemon Adventures manga, the Kanto Starters that the Kanto protagonists respectively own is also the starter that they would technically, by name, be stronger against. Red owns Sword, the Venusaur, Blue owns Charizard, the Charizard, and Green owns Blasty, the Blastoise. 10 out of 10 nicknames, I know, but when your names are Red, Blue, and Green, I wouldn't have expected anything else. For the Japanese translation, it doesn't really work because Blue and Green have their names swapped, but the Fire Red and Leaf Green chapters fixed this as a protagonist trait Pokemon, leaving Red with Charizard, Blue or Gary, who is green in Japan, with Venusaur, and Green, the female protagonist who is now blue in Japan, to keep her Blastoise, meaning that they have this starter that corresponds to their name for this section of the manga only in Japan. Despite Charmander's popularity amongst fans, developers have different favorites. In an interview, Junichi Masuda chose Bulbasaur, calling it very Pokemon-like Pokemon. Shigeru Omori preferred Squirtle because he likes water types. This balances out the fan preference for Charmander. Sort of. Besides Pikachu, Bulbasaur is the Pokemon that Ash has kept in his possession the longest. Every single member of Ash's original team has been released or given away to someone at one point or another. You can even say that Pikachu was released at some point with the episode Pikachu's Goodbye in the anime. But this has never happened with Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur has stayed with Ash and at the lab with the rest of Ash's Pokemon for the entirety of the series. Bulbasaur is the first Pokemon to be owned by more than one main character, where Ash and May both owned a Bulbasaur at the same time. After Pikachu and Meowth, Bulbasaur was the 3rd most common Pokemon in the anime. Yes, that's right, with Ash having Bulbasaur, Shauna having Ivysaur, and May having Venusaur, and Ash's Bulbasaur pretty much making a prominent appearance throughout half the entire anime, Bulbasaur had the bronze medal for the Pokemon with the most anime appearances. Notice the past tense? Yeah, it's taking 4th place now. 3rd place is now going to Charizard. I mean, it makes sense. And with the way Horizons is going, it's bound to make 2nd place at some point in the future. Out of all the ride Pokemon, Charizard is the only ride Pokemon that isn't a part of the Alola Dex. All the others are catchable in Alola, but no member of the Charmander family is. This pretty much confirms that Charizard only became a ride Pokemon because of its popularity. There's a bee named after Charizard called the Chilicola Charizard. The Chilicola Charizard is a stem-nesting bee discovered in Chile by Canadian scientist Spencer K. Mockton. Spencer mentioned that the Charizard bee and Charizard have some similarities with a long snout, which is why the name makes some kind of sense. But let's be real here, he named it Charizard because he could, because it was his favorite Pokemon family. Blastoise is better at putting out fires than a fire truck as stated by Super Smash Bros. Wii U trophy data. Now, you may already know this because the Squirtle family is always putting out fires in the anime, but I still thought it would have been cool to mention because of the Blastoise on the fire trucks that we saw in the first ever teaser trailer for Sun and Moon. Speaking of which, we never actually got to see them. Maybe we'll see them someday when they remake Gen 7 in 2038. In Super Smash Bros. Brawl, there were a few areas and stages in the game that had bodies of water that supported swimming for a few seconds. After these few seconds are over, the character will remain afloat and then eventually drown. And despite being a water-type Pokemon and having a shell that helps it swim, Squirtle will still drown. This is obviously to keep the game fair and balanced between all characters. Well, balanced, but regardless, it's still very ironic. Wartortle's ears were drawn very differently from what they are now. As you can see, this artwork shows Wartortle with ears that are similar in color to its face, causing its ears to not stand out as much as they do now. If the player chooses Charmander as their first Pokemon in Red and Blue, or locks himself out of receiving Bulbasaur in Pokemon Yellow, it is impossible to get Venusaur registered in the Pokedex without trading, as no NPC in said games uses a Venusaur under this condition. In Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, Cool Trainer Albert uses a Venusaur in Knockout mode at the Trainer Tower. The Bulbasaur family has the same dex numbers in the National Dex, Kanto Dex, and surprisingly, the Fiora Dex in Pokemon Ranger. In Pokemon Sun and Moon, Bulbasaur could learn Vine Whip at level 7 instead of Leech Seed. This is an oversight that was later fixed in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. The Pokemon Diamond and Pearl series is the only series to not show Charizard in any capacity. Another W for the Gen 4 anime being as hype as it is without any Charizard hype to back it up. The current design of a shiny Charizard was first seen in an official art from 2001, between the releases of Pokemon Crystal and Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, meaning that the new shiny form was established around this time. Blastoise flies around a new Pokemon snap like Gamera, a kaiju from Japanese films. Blastoise's Unite move, Hydro Typhoon, seems to be a combination of its two old signature moves, Hydro Pump and Hydro Cannon. The fully evolved Kanto Starters and Gengar are the only Pokemon that can both Mega Evolve and have Gigantamax forms. Makes sense as to why Ash got one of them. Hey, if you made it this far, then you must love starter Pokemon. You know who else loves starter Pokemon? Me! And I'm going to be having more of these starter fact videos coming up real soon that you won't want to miss. So how about subscribing so that you know when the next fact video comes out? It'll support the channel a bunch, and let me tell you, long videos like these are not easy to make. So anything that helps is greatly appreciated. While Squirtle, Wartortle, and Blastoise are a part of the Gen 1 beta, Blastoise or Carabaijo was originally its own Pokemon, with Wartortle having a different evolution. This evolution was later scrapped, and Blastoise was made to join the family, which explains the difference that Blastoise has to the other two. But it really makes you wonder how different things would have been, and it makes me consider who my mascot would have been if this didn't happen. In the Generation 1 Pokemon games, there was unused data that had Professor Oak as a trainer, and judging by the level of his team, the super boss of the game. His team was similar to his grandson's, and it contained a starter that neither you or your rival chose at level 69. So you know all those times you went back to try and take the last starter Pokemon that was sitting on Oak's desk, and the game kept telling you it was Oak's last Pokemon? Yeah, well, I don't know if it was his last Pokemon, but it was definitely his for a reason. In Pokemon Battle Revolution, players primarily used their own Pokemon for 4th Gen games, but a few Pokemon including starters were available without them. Unlike other games, it provided a full team of 6 starters based on the trainer's gender. Male trainers received the Sinnoh team, while female trainers got a Kanto team, including Ivysaur, Charmeleon, and Wartortle. Yeah, it might be time I start lying about my gender. Certain starter sets share themes, like Gen 1 starters all being based on reptiles. Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, and Venusaur resemble Dicynodonts, which are mammal-like reptiles. Charmander may be based off of Salamander, which is an amphibian, but Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard are also based off of lizards, which is why Charizard's Japanese name is called Lizardon. It's a reptile. And despite common misconceptions, turtles and tortoises are reptiles, not amphibians. Unlike amphibians, they lay eggs on land and have lungs from birth. Thus, Squirtle, Wartortle, and Blastoise are reptiles, fitting the reptilian theme of the Kanto Starters. The Squirtle Squad appeared in Pokemon Channel, where a member hosts a show, Shop and Squirtle, selling items. This is a nice throwback, although not widely known due to the game's obscurity. In Pokemon Yellow, there's a reference to the Squirtle Squad when you obtain Squirtle from Officer Jenny in Vermilion City. I love the Squirtle Squad, so I'm happy to get little moments like these. Charmander's origins based off the misconception by the philosopher Aristotle, who believed salamanders' bodies were cold enough to extinguish fire. This misconception led to legends and the belief that salamanders had an affinity for fire. Despite later scientific disproof, this legend inspired Charmander's creation. In 2020, a global poll was done by Google, or it was just called the Google Pokemon of the Year, not sure, but Charizard here won 4th place, which I mean, is a pretty big deal. But in 2023, while it was a Japan-only poll, Charizard dropped all the way from 4th place down to 23rd place. But if we ever do a global poll again, I still expect to see Charizard in top 5, if not at least the top 10. The invisible shiny Bulbasaur glitch is a lesser known glitch accessible through action replay codes or the problematic glitch in 4th-gen games. It involves encountering a normal type glitch Pokemon that's always shiny with the Bulbasaur cry and an off-frame sprite, making it appear invisible. This Pokemon's always male, level 0 with 0 HP and no usable attacks, causing it to struggle. The glitch can break the game, making it unusable. It's notable for being dedicated to Bulbasaur, similar to Mew's glitches. Though intriguing, it's advised not to try it due to the risk of game corruption. The entire English Bulbasaur family cannot be traded over the GTS in Generation 5 because Sau is German slang for swine and is considered offensive. This ban only applies to English versions as Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, and Venusaur in other languages are unaffected. For example, Japanese Bulbasaur is called Fushigidane and can be traded since it doesn't contain Sau or any offensive term. Before Generation 6, Rhyhorn and Charizard had an incredibly similar cry. Again, this lasted till Generation 6, where Charizard's cry was changed to this. Charizard's old cry was updated and reused for Mega Charizard Y. Leon's Charizard has the widest known move pool out of any Pokemon in the anime, with a total of 20 moves, if you include max moves. It also has the most type variety of any Pokemon when it comes to moves, with 8 different types being used. But if we're talking about just regular moves, then the crown goes to Ash's Charizard with 17 regular moves. Ash's Charizard appeared as a Charmander for an entire episode, Snow Way Out, after it had already evolved into Charizard. In this episode, Ash and his team used Charmander's tail to stay warm, despite Charmander evolving almost a year earlier. This happened due to episode reshuffling after the Porygon incident, causing confusion among North American fans. Ash's Charizard's gender is technically unknown. The anime avoids using gender pronouns for Charizard unlike other Pokemon. In the dubbed episode, Thanks for Memories, Brock refers to Charizard as he, but this isn't considered canon since in the Japanese version it never confirms it. Charizard's relationship with Charla implies it might be male, but this isn't definitive. But, I mean, yeah, it's gotta be a dude. In Super Smash Bros. Brawl, between all the 3 Pokemon trainers Pokemon, Squirtle, Ivysaur, and Charizard, Ivysaur is the only one who does not know any HM moves. Squirtle's moveset has Waterfall in the mix, and Charizard's moveset contains Rock Smash as well. In Smash Ultimate, Squirtle and Charizard still know HM moves, however they replace Rock Smash for Fly, which makes a lot more sense. Pokemon Stadium 2, there's a trainer in the 8th battle of the Poké Cup Ultra Ball R2 named Psychic Mason, who has a Blastoise with both Haze and Mirror Coat. It was possible for Blastoise to learn both of these moves through the use of egg moves, however, due to the mechanics of breeding, it was impossible for a Squirtle to be bred with both these moves until Generation 6, meaning that Psychic Mason had an illegal Blastoise. Until Pokemon aimed to be a Pokemon Master, a squad's worth of passion, Ash's Squirtle wasn't seen since the Kanto Battle Frontier, meaning it took Ash's Squirtle 763 episodes for it to be seen again. Alongside that, it took Ash, Pikachu, and his Kanto Starters 763 episodes to be reunited again. In this same episode, the Squirtle squad is seen to be wearing what are Power Ranger or Super Sentai outfits. I always knew I picked the right starter Pokemon. Masuda, the director of Pokemon X and Y, initially didn't plan to include those Kanto Starters in the main story. However, after seeing the Kanto Mega Evolutions, he decided they needed to be easily accessible to players. Since the Kalos Stars weren't given by the Professor, and Professor Sycamore started Mega Evolution, it was the perfect opportunity to include them. Hearing the announcement of the Kanto Stars during the Pokemon Direct and seeing their Mega Evolutions was an emotional moment for many fans, including myself. Thanks for that, Masuda. Niue, a small island nation in the South Pacific with a population of 1,935, uses New Zealand dollars due to its small size. However, they produce their own commemorative coins annually. In 2001, Niue's coin collection featured Pokemon including Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, Pikachu, and Meowth. These $1 coins had Niue's coat of arms on one side and a Pokemon on the other. Wouldn't it have been great to get payday paid out in these real-world Poké Dollars? Or maybe the conversion rate sucks, I don't know. 4 months before the release of Pokemon Red and Blue in North America, an accessory called the Game Boy Camera was released. The Game Boy Camera allowed users to take pictures and offered minigames and stamps. Notably, the Western release includes 6 stamps featuring Bulbasaur, Pikachu, Charmander, Squirtle, Meowth, and Mew, making their debut appearances. This gave Western fans a 4-month head start on the classic question, Bulbasaur, Charmander, or Squirtle. The Kanto Stars had their sprites updated in Generation 9 that changes a lot of their features, specifically their limbs and faces to make them look more reptilian. Specifically more like a frog, turtle, and lizard or dragon, respectively. And as a bonus, this one isn't really a fact, but I found it very interesting that the Kanto Starters for the Terra raids got the other type that would suit them the most. Venusaur's plant typically coming from the ground, giving it the ground Terra raid, Charizard obviously being more draconic and getting memed to be a dragon, giving it the dragon Terra raid, and Blastoise not having a secondary typing when almost everyone agrees it should be a steel type, giving it the steel Terra raid. They definitely knew what they were doing for this one. And one final bonus, I promised a video on all the Kanto starters, and among them is Pikachu, the 4th ever starter Pokemon. Pikachu is not only a starter Pokemon in Pokemon Yellow, in Pokemon Go, when you begin your journey, Professor Willow offers the original trio of starters. However, if you ignore them and walk away 4 times, Pikachu will reappear as a catchable starter. This is a delightful Easter egg that many fans, including myself, love. I'll see you next week where we cover 50 facts on legendary Pokemon.